In the following chapters, first we're going to give you an introduction to the chemistry, to the chemical context of life. Later, we will move to the importance of water and life, that is the most important chemical. Then, we will move to carbon and the molecular diversity of life, and we will focus on the diversity of carbon molecules. And later we will move into macromolecules, into the large biological molecules, and here we will study DNA, proteins, lipids, and different type of carbohydrate. So let's start. In this chapter, we are going to give you a little introduction about the elements and compounds. We are going to talk a little bit about chemical bonds, and in class we will talk about the properties of life that are very important to understand why actually life exists in our planet. Regarding these two first sections, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because I know that some of you already study chemistry. So I'm just going to give you a very quick summary of what you find in the textbook. But please, if you have any doubt, ask me a question or read the textbook and you can find many of the answers. Okay, and why are we studying this? Because chemicals are the stuff that make up our bodies, the body of other organisms, and our physical environment. So, if we understand chemistry, then we can understand the properties of our body and we can understand the property of ecosystems. In particular, if you see our planet, a big portion of our planet is water in the ocean and water in the north and the south and in the North Pole. So water plays a key role, and even in our body, most of our body is mainly water. So this is why we are going to study this chapter. So as I said, life chemistry is tied to water, and in the next class you will learn what is a hydrogen bond, and you will see that hydrogen bonds are very important to understand why water can exist in our planet. And remember that life first evolved in water and that all organisms require water to survive. In particular, we will talk about Canada and we will study the important relationship between water and Canada and how this can be actually important for the entire planet, how much water Canada has. And when I talk water, I talk about fresh water and also the importance of how important it is to preserve the water that Canada has. So, for example, this is a pesticide called DDT, and despite that it was suspended long time ago, more like 50 years ago, as you can see here, it was banned. We still find that this pesticide is still in some of the lakes and is polluting some of the lakes. So, why we have to study all this? Why water? What the elements are so important? Because we need to preserve the water that we have because we depend and our all the entire planet will depend of the water that Canada has. And just remember that the chemical reaction of your body occurred in cells consistent 70 to 90%, 95% of water. So now let's move to the elements and compounds and give you a very brief introduction of the chemical basis of. And we know that living organisms are composed of matter, which is anything that occupies space and mass. And I know you studied this in high school. And matter is composed of elements. And I'm sure that you know that this is the periodic table. And if not, please read the chapter of the book about the periodic table. And an element is a substance that cannot be broken down into another substance. And there are 92 elements in nature, uh, but only few exist in pure state. On the other hand, a compound is a substance consisting of two or more elements in a fixed ratio. Compounds are more common than pure elements. So, for example, the sodium chloride is more common than The chlorine and the sodium alone, these are not as common as the table cell. We are going to talk about a lot of things, but from this chapter, I want that you remember that there are 25 elements that are essential to life. So of all these elements that we have, that exist in the periodic table, we have three main groups. So some that are very abundant in our body, some that are little, that we have just a little bit in our body, and some that we have very little in our body. So major, minor, and trace elements. So the major, the ones that are very abundant, represent 96% of the weight of most living organisms. Very important, oxygen. This will be important, maybe hydrogen. Yeah, these two will form water, carbon, and nitrogen. So these four are represent 96%. Minor only represent 4% approximately, and we have phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, potassium, etc. And the trace elements are essential but are only needed in minute quantities, like iron, that is very important for in our blood, copper, iodine, and selenium. And some of them are required for the function of proteins called enzymes that catalyze reactions, and some of them are required for hormones or for certain organs, and we will show you some problems when you don't have these trace elements. So please go to your textbook, and here you can see again these three groups. So remember this one, the group of the most abundant. Here you find these four, the ones of the minor, and the trace elements are just 0.01, and you have some examples here. So as I said before, these trace elements are very important, and they are so important that to prevent diseases, they are added in both food and water. So let me show you three examples. The first one is iron. If you don't have iron in your body, you cannot transport oxygen. So that is very important. And if you see this person, here you see in the neck, this person has an iodine deficiency. So although you need a very little amount of iodine, if you don't have it, this can prevent the production of thyroid hormones. And finally, I'm sure that you know that fluoride is added to municipal water and also in dental products, and this can help to reduce tooth decay. So I show you three examples: iron, iodine, and also fluoride. And these three examples, so just some indication that show you that these trace elements are important.